Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to throw together the XP-01. The X will be temporary as I'll be pushing this design a little bit further forward. Um, X is kind of like for like prototype or whatever. I'm not sure, not 100% on like what the name should be. Yeah, I mean, right now I have everything set in front of me. Um, I went ahead and disassembled the entire airsoft replica, and I've also kind of reassembled the AAP just to give anybody who's new to this just kind of a full rundown of how to take everything apart and whatnot. I'm going to leave timestamps here, and just as a YouTube thing, disclaimer: everything in here is not real. Or there's no actual firearms. These are all just toys. Yeah, now that that's out of the way, um, I am going to run through all of the parts that you see on here, and you're going to have to work with me on the the quality of the video. So anyway, I'm still going to use this. I'm going to try my best to keep everything within these two pieces of tape, um, just to make sure that everything stays in frame. I'm going to run through some of the hardware, some of the tools and the fasteners that you're going to need. To get started, here are some of the tools that you might need. Starting from this side, um, you will need an M5 Allen key or something along the lines of that, an M4 Allen key, and over here, just kind of cut off on the edge of the video, is an M3 Allen key that came with my Bamboo Lab printer. I have a little Phillips screwdriver. Um, this came from a drone kit, but this is going to be useful for punching out pins. Um, you can also use like any other screwdriver, but like the small screwdriver is very useful for getting pins out of the replica. Um, Craft knife will be nice in case you have to make any trims, if there are any issues with tolerances or trimming some of the excess around some of the airsoft parts that you 3D print. A pair of tweezers might be useful, and a pair of needle nose pliers. So that's those are the tools that you're probably going to need. Um, Fasteners. I have all the M5 screws over here. Um, as I go along, I will run through what each one is for, so we'll work our way through that. Here's some M4 screws, um, and all the M3 screws are gathered over here. And off of Amazon, I found this Comdocs, um, screw kit or screw package. Just has a bunch of nuts, M4, M5, and M3 screws, and these range from M3 by 8 to M3 by 20. Same for M4 and M5 all the way across. This is going to be super nice for anything. I'm going to try and get that in focus with the light. Excuse the the quality, but there you go. If you want to take a look for one of these guys. Um, Note that some of the hardware is also inside of the replica, so make sure you keep some of the parts in here, especially if you find that this whole kit isn't your thing. You can always go back and throw everything back into your AAP. Okay, for 3D printed parts, I'm just going to work toward the back here. So here is the trigger that will be dropped into the front grip. I can't recall the part numbers off the top of my head, but you'll kind of get an idea when you see how this looks. This is the top rail that'll go on top. This is going to be very interesting to throw in because there are some challenges with it, and I still have to work out building up the strength for this because you'll notice that there's a little bit of glue on the end here. This was just a UV glue. You can use it to reinforce the charging handle, but it's nice to yank back and pull up. Um, yeah, there was a crack that was forming along the edge here, so I'm considering to print this in PETG. I will leave the results once I get around to it. This is where everything kind of takes place. This is the receiver. This is one of the older receivers. I originally called this the AAB because I thought it was quite funny. But you know, if enough people end up liking AAB over XP-01, then I'll stick with that later on, and I'll just rename the whole thing. I'm not sure if that's any copyright trademark sort of infringement, so I'm going to keep that in there. Here is the charging plate. This is going to go on the back of the AAP. Once we throw the kit together, these are the two stock pieces, and essentially they will fit together one on top of the other. So I'll get around to that later. And lastly, here's the handguard. This one's not super critical to print in PLA Plus, but I would recommend it if you're going to actually add some M-LOK components on here. Well, what's nice about the printing all of these components in PLA Plus is that they're actually quite denser than your typical PLA. So anyway, now that I have wrapped that up, I'm going to move all these parts off to the side, and I'm going to start disassembling the AAP. And you'll notice I was a little bit lazy on this. I left the AAP barrel on here from the bullpup kit. This is not super critical. I will show you how to take it apart and how to throw this all together. So, getting started. One of the first things I would want you to do is make sure you have everything set out in front of you and make sure you keep all of the parts that are in this thing. So to get started, you're going to hit this back button on the AAP to lift it up. And another disclaimer, I'm going to discuss this as if you are a complete newbie. So if you're already familiar with taking apart the AAP and you know you've already looked at some other videos, absolutely no problem. You can kind of fast forward ahead. So starting off, I have taken the top off the AAP by pressing that button, and so that part comes off. And there are going to be two kind of parts. You have the lower receiver, and you also have the upper receiver and the barrel. So I'm going to get started off by working on the lower receiver. So I'm going to set this aside. And one of the first things that I want to do is I want to take out the rear trigger assembly and the front trigger assembly. So in order to do that, I'm going to take my M3 Allen key, and there are three countersunk screws that are attached to the front trigger housing. So I am going to take this apart. Now, correction, this rear part, I called it a trigger assembly. This is more like the steel, the hammer and stuff. And also, for anybody who's also new, I would recommend getting a steel hammer set from either TTI or Cow. They're somewhere near the same price. Cow is a little bit more expensive than TTI. There's not too much of a difference. So taking these screws out. So I have taken these three screws out, and those three screws came from this side of the AAP, this side of the AAP, and looking down from plan view right through the top here in front of the safety switch. So I'm going to set these three screws aside with the rest of the M3x8 screw pile over here. And next I'm going to take my tweezers, needle nose pliers, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to squeeze this part of the safety housing together like so. Not sure if you can get a good view of that, but if you squeeze this and you push the firing side through this way, so first I'm squeezing here and pushing through here, I am able to get this part out. Now, as I go through the disassembly, especially if it's your first time, is really good to take photos throughout the entire AAP. Just so you have like a reference in case, oh no, a part flew somewhere. I can go back and look at the photos like, okay, I know where that came from. Trust me, I've had issues on my AEGs and springs flying everywhere. It wasn't a very fun experience. So next thing I want to do, I've taken out the screws, I've taken out the safety switch, so there's only one more thing stopping this trigger housing from coming out, and though that's the pin. Same for the rear. There are no screws on top. There are these two pins on the back. So um, I'm going to lay the AAP on its side, and I have my little handy dandy screwdriver. And you can use something heavy like a hammer or like you know, in my case, I'm going to be using the back of a screwdriver that I have lying around. I'm just going to lightly tap out each of these three pins. And once I'm done that, on the opposing side, those pins are going to come out, and you'll notice that they have a little bit of knurling to keep them inside of the plastic lower receiver housing. So I'm going to take all these three out. I will need them later. So these three parts are one, the pin with a thinner neck going along the middle, a small pin that's uniform throughout, and then I have the larger trigger housing pin. And I'm going to set those three aside next to the screws over here. So the next part, you want to be careful. There is, I believe this is called the sear. So I'm going to zoom in here, this little triangular thing right here. If you push it down, it'll pop back up because there's a spring underneath. Um, so when you start taking this out, you are going to put your thumb on that sear and you're going to slowly pull the trigger. And that'll slowly pop out, if I can get it to. Because the last thing you want to do is, lose this thing and especially the spring underneath it. You'll notice, there we go. This is popping all the way out. This spring will be under a little bit of compression, so don't lose it. I've lost one of these springs in the past, and I had to go to one of my spare pistols and pull out a different one. So there's the housing. I'm going to leave that over there, and what's left is the trigger housing up in the front. So I'm going to pull this out slowly. And what I hastily did not include in here because it is a bit of a pain is I have the part off to the side here is this little spring for the bolt catch. I did not include this in here. Maybe sometime later on, if I find the time, I would like to add that in there so the bolt can lock on the bullpup itself. I don't have that functionality in there. So I've taken out the housing, and what's left, you can see the bolt catch over here. You have the trigger arm and the trigger itself. So I'm going to pull these parts apart. Keep this. This will not end up in the bullpup kit as it is today in the present. And what's left is this trigger assembly. And the housing over here. These you will be using later in the lower receiver. Next thing you want to do is you want to go back to this lower AP assembly, and you have this spring on the bottom. You're not sure if you would be able to see that, but if you look down inside, you will see one spring, and that is holding the magazine catch up in the front. So what I'm going to do is you can use a pair of tweezers, you can use a pair of pliers, and you are going to, if you're right-handed, you are going to push the spring and uncatch it toward the right side, I believe. Yes, to the right side, and unhook the spring from the magazine release. So I'm gonna do that. You use your thumb, push it forward, and then you'd be able to pop this guy out. There's your magazine button, your magazine release button, and then there's the spring kind of dangling on the inside there. Not sure if you can see that. You move it to the back. I'll pull it out. There we go. So it looks like that. So that is the AAP lower receiver taken out. We will keep this. We don't need it anymore, but in case you want to go back, you always have it with you. Good stuff. Moving on to the upper receiver. So you're going to have front and rear iron sights. The first thing that you're going to want to do is remove those rear iron sights because they are going to be replaced. And what you will have left are two M3 by, I think, M3 by 4 or M3 by 3 countersunk screws. And you do not want to lose these. These are also a pain in the ass if you lose them. And I'm going to stick that in the M3 pile. Um, and what we have left here is the bolt. So now you would be able to slide it all the way out. Unfortunately, one of the nuts on the inside here is coming loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw an M3 screw in, and I'm going to pull the nut out so I have clearance to remove the bolt. Because you'll notice on the inside of these, there is two little wing-looking nuts on the inside there. You can see them kind of shiny. You don't want to lose those. So anyway, that is the bolt removed. Next thing I want to do is the barrel. So the front barrel, you're going to be replacing with this new barrel, uh, and essentially there are two screws on the front and the back of the hop-up unit, and you can unscrew these two. Do, 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 do. I only have one in here because I was also hasty with this. Okay, and in order to remove that front barrel, what you're going to do is you're going to pull slightly out, and you're also going to twist. So the hop-up gears, especially if you're using a default hop-up that comes with the AP, the stock one, you will have clearance to remove that outward. So I'm going to slide this slowly outward. So it's going to pop like that. So now it's loose, and I'm going to twist it so the hop-up gears are facing downward. Bing, bang, boom. There you go. There's your barrel out and your hop up. So in order to remove these, you will need, I completely forgot, you will need a smaller Allen key. I believe either 2mm or 1.5. And so I have that here. This is a tiny little guy. And on this hop up unit, there are two screws on either side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew one side. Okay, don't lose these. Ideally, you should have this barrel printed before you take this part out. So I'm going to unscrew these two screws, and I'm going to slowly just shimmy out the barrel. And there you go. So here is the barrel. And at this point, you would remove the stock AAP barrel, and then you put this guy on. And so the top of the barrel is the side with the one angled kind of screw hole, and then on the opposite side you have the incomplete kind of curve of the hop up, and you basically just slide it right in, and you should see the holes line up perfectly. So there's that one hole on the bottom, two holes on the sides. I'm going to take my 1.5 millimeter, what I assume is a 1.5 millimeter Allen key, and I'm going to screw these in. Now be careful when you screw these in. You do not want to strip the screws. Um, come in a little bit slowly. Make sure you've caught it, and then you can slowly kind of make that snug. Don't tighten it too tight because the worst thing that can happen is you strip the hexagon in the screw and then you can't get it out and then you're kind of stuck with this forever. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the other side. I'm going to put the screw inside, kind of rest it on top. I'm going to kind of unscrew it so I can get that screw to catch, and then I will go in the rest of the way and screw in the rest of that screw. Nice and snug. Not super tight, as long as, that's not going to get out. And if you don't want anything to move and you have access to some Loctite, a nice little method is get yourself like a little paper receipt or something, or like some plastic dish, something that's not absorbent. Take a little bit of Loctite, drip a little drop on there, and what you would do is you take a screw and just lightly brush the threads inside of that Loctite, because adding Loctite on top of it would be very messy, and then especially if you have a mouse pad underneath, you're going to end up drenched in a mess. So, but I digress. We're back to the hop-up unit and the barrel. So now you should have this on. At this point, there should be a ring on the barrel. You could just slide that on top all the way to the back. A little difficult because of the threads on the front, in case you have any 3D printing imperfections. But you can slide it on and you're kind of good to go for later. Okay, so now I am going to put this hop-up unit back into the top. So now I'm kind of done with that. I've got that back in there, and I'm going to add my bolt back inside. So I'm going to slide that back in on the other side. There we go. To take this guy over here, the hammer housing, make sure that the sear and the um, spring are in the right place on the side. So if I just hold this up to the camera here, make sure that kind of focuses. There is the spring underneath the sear, and I'm going to hold the sear in place and make sure I have that ready to go. Next, I'm going to take my magazine catch spring and the magazine catch, and I'm going to throw it inside here. Now, keep in mind that, ignore the sticker. As long as you print with supports, this will be okay, but if need be, I would take my craft knife and shave off the inside on either side, just to make sure I have some tolerance in here for the magazine catch to slide smoothly. If you notice it does gel up, you can work it just by pressing the button over and over and over again, or you can do that trimming. So you'll probably see the magazine spring a little bit better in here. So I'm going to push it all the way down, and the side that I want the button to be on, I want the longer spring side on that side. So in my case, I want the button to be pressable from the left side of the gun in order to drop the magazine. And I'm going to slide in from right to left this magazine catch. And so I slid it all the way in, but the spring is not engaged with it. So here's where my handy dandy tweezers come in. I'm going to grab the spring with the tweezers and I'm going to wrap it around and hook it onto the magazine catch. So when I do that, now the button is in place and you can see that I can press it, no problem. There we go. All right, so now that that's in there, I'm going to drop my trigger assembly in. So make sure you clear out all of the excess whatnots, leftovers from 3D printing, whether it be supports or brims, whatever the case may be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to my hammer assembly and I'm going to grab my trigger assembly. And what I'm going to do is there is a little nib nub on the trigger bar. That nub is going to go in this kind of slot that you see on the right side of the hammer assembly. I'm going to slide that in there and make sure that the trigger bar kind of peeks its head up on top of the housing, kind of like that. There you go. Right. So I'm going to slowly drop this in all together. My main concern is to make sure that that spring and sear is lined up properly and that the um, trigger bar housing fits in. So that's going to go in first. And I'm going to take out my pin and I'm going to slide the rest of the trigger housing in. So now everything should be all good and all together. All right. So next thing I want to do, I want to knock in some pins. So uh, to make sure everything's kind of captive, I'm going to take my small uniform pin and just like where the AAP was, I'm going to put it onto the side of the gun. My preference is all the knurled sides of the pins will be facing the right side of the replica. And just because I like to work with it lying flat with the magazine catch on the upward side because the charging handle will also be facing upward. So you can knock out the pins a lot easier. I'm going to push that pin all the way in. Now, something I also like to do, if I want to get that pin in there, I can take a Robinson bit, or you can find any kind of small flat surface. I like this one because it's just like a little square. I'm just going to lightly tap that in. You can use this, you can use the head of a pair of tweezers for this. You can use a screwdriver. You can use anything. I'm just using a leftover Robinson bit on the side, so that'll fit in just nice. I'm going to do the same thing with the non-uniform rear pin. I'm going to slide that in the top one, and I'm going to lightly tap that in till it's nice and flat. Trigger pin, same thing. I'm just going to slide it all the way through and tap this guy in. So now we have all of our pins in place. We have our trigger assembly. If you want to give it a test fire, you can pull the trigger and make sure that's working properly. I did do a bit of a goof. I just realized I forgot this little um, bolt, not bolt catch, upper receiver catch. So I'm gonna undo some of my work. Tap these through, knock out the pins, take them out, and a very my excuse is I'm getting extra practice, and there's no big problem with that. Um, Another thing you'll notice, this is not the stock AAP spring. This is a pen spring because I lost the AAP spring. So make sure, again, you have all of your parts accounted for. Also, make sure your room is clean so you don't lose all this stuff. Because that will be very annoying, especially if you happen to have a vacuum and you vacuum up your lovely spring. So now we have the button in here, the upper receiver removal button. I guess I'll call it that like that. And everything kind of fits. So I'm going to finish off by adding the last of the M3 screws back to the 3 points where I pointed out right at the start of the video. So I'm going to screw in the front. Do, 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 do. And so far we have not, aside from the super small M3 screws, we have not used any of our longer screws yet. So keep yourself excited for the rest of that. Gonna screw this guy in. Excuse me. All right, so um, the hammer, or not hammer, trigger housing safety button. In order to get this in, you're going to slide this in from the side. There should be an extra little jut part out here, so your thumb can find the safety if you were in a firefight. You are going to slide with the up facing up sign facing up, all the way across. Don't need any special tools for that. You are sliding it all the way across the red band side all the way through. Okay. All right. Lower assembly done. What's next? We are going to work from the backside up. So we are going to add the stock. Then we are going to add the receiver and then the top rail and the handguard. So next I'm going to add the top. So the upper receiver assembly that we've already done, I'm going to slide this on top, click it into place. So if you did this all right, then everything should fit together. I would not pull back on the bolt just yet because we do not have the little device that goes in the back here, which would be originally the rear iron sights. So next, I'm going to take my awesome lower receiver, and I'm going to slide the stock on this. In the future, I am planning to make longer stocks, especially for longer people. I am a fairly small person, so I'm going to, ooh, whoops, I'm going to grab these M4 by, these look like M4 by 12s. Yes, I'm going to grab these M4 by 12 screws, and I'm going to screw in the stock. Screw them all the way in. There we go. The reason why I have a bunch of screws being used in this build is because I have the whole kit and I would like to use a variety of screws to kind of make sure that I don't use too much of one. I guess standardizing it would be nice. Um, I might actually consider that for other builds. But my plans for this receiver is so that it's standardized. So in case I come up with other designs in the future, you won't have to reprint a bunch of these airsoft parts. You can just reuse the old ones that you have that you already know work just fine. And it would be a great, starting ground for anybody who wants to build their own. At some point, I will release the dimensions, I hope, um, so other people can have access to it and kind of give, this a shot themselves. I think, that as long as people are being creative and responsible about it, I don't see the problem. I just want to make sure everybody has a good time. That's what the whole sport's about. All right, there's our stock in the back. Um, Next part, I'm going to add the upper bit. So looking from the bottom side, you'll notice that there is a hole for the charging handle, and there's also a slot in the back here. Um, so what I'm going to be doing is onto the bolt, this bolt catch, or was it bolt addition for the charging handle, you will need an M5 by 8 screw to put this in. And what I am going to do is I'm going to add this onto the back. I'm going to take my M5 hex key and I'm going to screw this on. So this will reach up to the um, was it up to the bolt charging handle and allow you to rack the bolt from the front. So now there's a little piece on the back here to actuate it back and forth. So now I'm going to add this piece on top, and it's going to just slide right in. Perfect. Keep in mind that when you print this, this will be printed upside down, so there will be support for where those two little screws come in, the ones for the rear iron sights. Make sure you clear that area out. It'll be a little bit difficult, but nothing can stop you if you have a craft knife. I'm going to put this on. And the reason why you clean up that is so that when you put the screws in, you don't have a bunch of debris underneath that restricts you from adding in that screw. So I'm going to slide that in, make sure I screw that in all right. And again, like the barrel screws, you want to put it in snug. I would recommend Loctite if you are adding it in like for kind of permanently, I guess. But if this is your first run, I recommend don't add any Loctite. Make sure you fit all the parts together so you don't get all gunky if you have to remove and repair. Okay, so I added those two small screws, the M3 by 3s, I believe. And I'm also going to take these M4 by, I believe, M4 by 20s. Let me do a check. Yes, M4 by 20 screws. And you're going to add them to the backside. Now, this might, the M4 by 20 screws might be a little bit redundant. Since I'm using two, you can probably get away with one, but I like to use two because there's going to be a lot of force and jostling around with this. And the last thing I want to do is add too much stress onto these two front screws. Those two front screws are really only holding on to these two tiny, I guess, nuts. I really don't like that. So I want to make sure that this top part is installed correctly and securely with these two M4 by 20 screws. All right, so next, the front grip. This front grip, you're going to take your trigger assembly, really easy, just to drop in right on top. There we go. Beautiful, just like that. And make sure that slides freely. Again, with your craft knife, if you run into any issues with tolerances or, this is feeling very gummy, then you can scrape it, clear it out, and then you should be good. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my second set of M4 by 20 screws, and I'm going to screw them into the side, like so. And this will keep the trigger captive on the replica. And it will also force the trigger to slide back and forth instead of making funny angles and coming into the trigger the wrong way. There we go. So we have that trigger going back and forth, sliding back and forth just nice. And also, if you want to, you can also make it a little bit looser if need be. You don't have to tighten it to death. I'm going to do that right now. As long as you're using a little bit of Loctite, should be fine. But I'm making it a little bit loose so this can slide freely and the trigger doesn't have as much resistance pushing back. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this on like so. And I'm going to take my lovely M5 screws. And these look like M5 by 12s. Just going to confirm yes. So I'm going to take my M5 by 12 screws. I'm going to screw these guys in all the way through. And what I'm doing, keep in mind that I'm not screwing in just like the stock in the back here. I'm going to screw in either side to make sure both sides are equal because there is a little bit of a tolerance to it. Um, if you screw in one side all the way and one side isn't screwed in all the way, that there's a little bit of imbalance between the two screws. So just to make things simple and make things centered, I want to screw in both sides, kind of alternating back and forth because it just works out better like that. So it's kind of off camera here, but I'm just going back and forth to make sure that my grip assembly is nice and centered. And depending on how good your printer is, I tried my best to iron this out. Inside of the model, these two holes don't align, but after I ended up printing on my Bamboo P1P, they just so happened to align. It is very strange. I had to do a bunch of iterations to make sure these two holes fit because what's inside of the model does not match what happens in real life. So you might need to use a little bit of force to make sure that the grip is screwed in correctly. You can force it. You can use these M5 screws to help guide the grip into its proper position. But otherwise, and I hope and I believe this should fit on your first try. Don't hold me to it, but I've done about 3 or 4 iterations trying to get this stupid thing to fit and be level. So um, once you've screwed in the grip and the trigger, you can test it out. You can pull the trigger and you should be able to hear click. If you want to reset it, I'm just going to take my bit again. I'm just going to stick it through the charging handle hole, push it all the way back, and then I should be able to reset the trigger. So this is a nice test to do now, so you don't go too far and realize, oh, I've missed something. Okay, so we have most of this assembled. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to take this ring and I'm going to slide it up just so the ring matches right where this hole is, because this will support the barrel. Um, Ideally, in an actual firearm, you want the barrel to be free floating, but since this is airsoft, this is all this is all plastic. I want this ring here just to give the barrel a little bit more rigidity, so you don't damage your hop up if say bump this into a wall or something, and then the barrel bends off one way and cracks. I wouldn't want that to happen. I want to make sure that this is strong enough to take on a few hits. Okay, so um, the next thing I want to do is the top rail assembly. So let me move this off to the side, clean up my workspace here. It's a little bit of a mess. And so this top rail assembly is going to be a little bit finicky. So I'm going to break this down for you as best I can. So I'm going to take my charging handle. I'm going to slide in the little nub inside. And I'm going to put the charging handle inside like this. Make sure that you can slide the charging handle no problem without too much friction. And if there is, then I just rack this a bunch and make sure that it kind of clears things out. You can also visit your local dollar store and find like these small diamond files. You can find these at some also local hardware stores. I wasn't able to find it at, say, Canadian Tire, Home Depot, um, but the actual local family sort of dollar stores, they'll have stuff like this. So you can use files to make sure that this charging handle fits in. Okay, so next thing I want to do, I'm taking these M3 by 20 screws and I'm going to be adding this on top. So the issue, especially with this part, this is a fairly long part. Oh, whoops, fairly long part. The issue with this is that the ends bend. If you notice, the whole thing is on kind of a curve. You can see the bottom path there. Uh, that is an additional challenge that makes this whole build a little bit harder. So follow exactly what I do. I'm going to put in the back screw and I am going to semi-tighten it just to make sure that it's in the right place and the whole assembly is not moving back and forth. I'm going to take an M3 by 8 screw, put it onto my hex key, and because the tolerances vary between some of the parts, this part here is not a hole. This is a slot, a very short slot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these M3 screw inside and I am going to tighten it down. And this slot is connected to the front of the barrel over here. I'm going to screw this in all the way. So now that that's locked in place, I know that this screw is in its proper position. So that means this screw is in its proper position. This is, and this would be all the way through. So now I'm going to unscrew this screw to make way for the charging handle. And if you've screwed in this M3 by 8 screw in the slot all the way, then the charging handle should go in just fine and slide all the way to the back. And give that a test rack. It looks like it's working just fine. And now I can finally add in these two back screws. So I'm going to add this screw back here. Another thing to keep in mind, if you tighten this screw down too hard, especially because the top rail bows when it's printing, you can lock the bolt. So if I screw this in and I yank back the charging handle, you'll notice the bolt actually gets stuck. So in order to undo that, you just have to unscrew this a little bit and you'll find the right depth to screw this screw in. What I'm considering is actually designing a shiv to fit underneath this countersunk head. Whoops, I dropped my key. To fit underneath this countersunk head. So that would be useful later on, so you don't screw it down too hard. Then I'm going to take my other M3 by 20 screw and I'm going to put it in here. Now, sometimes a challenge that I had before, in order to make this work, I had to go back and forth and figure out what the best way was to do this. And the simplest way that I could get it to work was this method. So I'm going to screw this M20 screw all the way in. Now, it might be a little bit annoying to kind of get in place. Doesn't seem to want to stick in. So what I'm going to do to troubleshoot that is I'm going to unscrew this back screw. Take that out. And then I want to take out this M20 screw. And I added this under this kind of notch here in order to get this screw out. So I'm going to slide my craft knife inside. I'm going to give a little bit of upward pressure while I unscrew this. It's a little bit finicky to do, but I'm trying my best. There we go. that is out. So slide this out. I'm going to undo this M3x8 slot in the front. That gives me a little bit of slidey motion to this. I'm going to make sure this screw is in its proper place. I'm going to screw this guy back in. And I'm going to check to make sure that this screw fits as well. Seems like it does. I'm going to unscrew this, and I'm going to undo, make sure this is snug. Undo this screw. There we go. All right, now I'm going to do the charging handle again. I'm not going to cut that part out because I feel that it will be a little bit more genuine to have that in there in case you do need to troubleshoot. I feel that some tutorials cut out some important parts just to make it look clean, but it's I want to make sure that you can see some of the problems as well working through this so you're aware of it. Is the last thing I want you to do is to be clueless, end up leaving a comment, and then I never get around to it. I don't want to be that kind of person. So there we go. The charging handle works now. This is screwed in, this is screwed in, and this is screwed in. Give that a test. Does it slide well? You can lubricate it with some like airsoft grease or any kind of lubrication that does not have petroleum that can deteriorate the plastic. So I'm glad that works. Next thing I want to do is I want to throw on the handguard. So this is pretty much almost the last thing. So I'm going to slide this guy on. I'm going to do a check on how many screws I have. I've got two M3 by 12 screws, and these ones will go in the middle. So I'm going to start off by doing that. And these will lock the barrel support ring in place. So I'm going to screw that all the way in. There we go. And just like the other parts, I'm going to make sure I screw in both sides to make sure that the barrel ring is centered. There we go. And there we go. Screw in this guy. So I'm going to take the last of my M3 by 8 screws and I'm going to add them on the sides to make sure that the handguard is in place. These ones are less critical. You don't have to go back and forth between the two. These are just to help support the handguard while you add it in here. So I'm going to add that in. Do, 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 do. And then I'm going to take one more M3 by 8 screw and the last bit, which this slot on your version will be a little bit smaller because I worked it out. This is a previous version of the top rail, so it doesn't 100% match yours. I'm going to screw this front screw in, and this will help lock that top rail down for charging. So there you go. There's the AAP. I'm going to rack that back. Does that work? Yep, looks like it. I'm going to slide this back forward, pull on the trigger. Does this work? Yes, it is resetting every single time. Perfect. So that is the build for the AAP. Um, few more things to note. I just want to see if I can recall any tips off the top of my head. Um, you can, when you rack this and you don't just let it go, you don't kind of send it home, I guess, and the charging handle gets stuck part way, or you notice it comes out but your trigger's not firing, rack it again. Give that like a, just let it go once you pull back on the charging handle, and then the spring will have enough force to push the whole charging handle back forward. Um, for those who want to switch between full auto and semi-auto, you can yank back the charging handle, lock it up, and then you have access on the back here to switch your firing mode. Um, a comment was left by another user that mentioned some people don't really use it at all. So I would probably have another cheek riser part that goes all the way down to cover that up. Um, anyway, that is the build. You can put on your optic of choice. I just have two red dots that I can mount on top if I wanted to. And yeah, that's the build. Make sure all your parts work. And if you have any message or if you have any issues, then let me know in the comments. Hopefully I was thorough enough on this tutorial. And yeah, have a great day.